A listener warning. Please be advised that this episode contains content that may be disturbing to some listeners, including descriptions of violence. Listener discretion is advised.
Life upon the wicked stage ain't ever what a girl supposes.
I'm Jen.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Olivia.
And we are, in fact, three different people.
This podcast focuses on true crime under the spotlight of arts and entertainment. So grab your beverage of choice and settle in.
Places, ladies.
Here's our episode. Hi, friends. What is Olivia doing?
Olivia was doing a very last-minute frantic cleaning of the
I was
lens
cleaning
of her camera.
my camera lens. I need to be visible in all my formal floozy attire. That's
Formal
my theme
floozy
tonight.
wear.
It's formal floozy. Yeah.
So
I love it.
this is part 2 of a 2-part episode on the
right.
Black Dahlia. And last week when we recorded, we all sort of went with this black lace motif. And today, for those who are looking at our Patreon, our video, Jen and I both have a kimono.
Yes, we do.
A stylish kimono happening.
Yes.
Olivia, describe what you're wearing. This is very dramatic.
Yeah.
Well, once again, I don't match the two of you.
Once again, she went Victorian.
That's right. I was going Victorian. Well, yes, what I'm wearing is a lovely, very low-cut dress. And I thought I'm going to go with formal floozy in honor of our flooziness. And it's just a dramatic.
And our official season finale.
Yeah, I wanted to honor the floozy inside all of us.
I love it.
It's Olivia, without being weird, the girls look great.
They look great.
Thank you.
In this ensemble.
That is one positive to having a higher BMI than you're supposed to.
The girls just looking great.
Yeah.
When someone goes back and listens to this podcast and is like, hey, that throuple, go back to episode 2 and listen, throwback. They're going to get it when they come to this episode right here. I mean,
Jen, until you said that, I'd forgotten all about that.
The
But you're
throuple.
absolutely right.
That's us.
Well, Ashley, I mentioned this to you earlier in a work meeting because Ashley and I actually work together now.
Yes, they do.
Same
I'm
establishment.
so
The same
jealous.
Establishment, yes. And
As I sit at home
I know.
working as a freelance artist. So
Jen,
jealous.
you have a very cool job. Olivia and I sit at computers and have meetings. And
I do. I made a movie
handle
2 days ago.
business documents. Jen is in a movie. She's in a commercial. She's all over the place. She's famous in Canada.
We had to reschedule our filming because Jen got booked in a movie on Sunday.
Sorry, guys.
Sure
did.
Sure did.
Ashley and I were in a work meeting today, and I made a little joke that no one else on the Zoom call got.
Doesn't matter.
I was getting off of the call, and I was like, "Okay, well, it's great to see your faces, especially Ashley's, because it looks like mine."
One of our colleagues was particularly perturbed. They were like, and I think there are still people, because I am new to the establishment. Olivia is not, and I think there was some level of wait, y'all know each other outside of this situation,
right?
Because though we're at the same company, we're not on the same team,
right?
So but there was some confused faces and an eyebrow raise of wow, Olivia thinks a lot of herself. Here's how bad this is, and listeners, maybe some of you have better ears and you're not having this problem, but I listen to our episodes sometimes before they drop. Again, this week, I confused myself with Jen, my own voice. It was Jen was speaking, and then I answered, and it was very strange. I was like, "Why did I answer my?" No, that was not me. That was Jen. I answered myself.
Are they coming to take me away? What's going on?
Why did I answer?
Oh my god!
Just the intonation in that, not always, but in that moment, we were one and the same.
Yep, it happens.
Vocally.
It absolutely does.
I love it.
Well, to be clear, I, Jen, am going to finish us off this season with part 2.
Jen is the researcher and host of our Black Dahlia season finale 2-parter.
Are you ladies ready to dive in?
Bring us into this happy ending, Jen.
All right.
I have my cab. I have a dramatic lip.
I'm ready
let's
to.
go.
I know. I love that lipstick. Yes. Olivia with her water. It's fine. Listen, one of us needs to be lucid enough to be able to figure out who did this. So
I'll be the designated driver this evening.
You be the designated driver and the designated investigator.
Mm-hmm.
Olivia's the responsible adult. We're
Yeah,
just floozies
fine.
over here.
Boy,
but-
you guys in trouble if I'm the responsible one. Lord. Lord
We're
help us.
drinking-
So last week, if you have not listened to our last episode, please go back and do so because it covers a lot and you're going to be very, very lost. And there's so much, I can't go back. It's gruesome, so be prepared. But the basic gist is Elizabeth Short was murdered by person or persons unknown. January 15th, 1947 is when she was found. And it's a mystery. So today we're going to go into the theories and the suspects, and then we're going to speculate wildly.
of whom there are many.
Many.
Because I had sent you a message back. You said, I think I want to do Black Dahlia. And I said, I'm pretty sure I have this book if you want to borrow it as part of your research. And I cracked the book. I had to shut it after page 10 because it was already just so wild with like theories and people. I was like, it's too much. I'm just going to wait for Jen to unpack this and maybe I'll be able to follow.
Wow.
Because it was so much.
What I
to
oh my
finish unpacking
god,
this because there are so many people involved
so many
in this case. Like this is wild.
yes.
There was
And
so much corruption. There's like no lack of motivated criminal people around her.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And just where she was. And there are so many that I only really covered the big ones.
So there's
Suspect-wise.
extraneous people who are nothing burgers, but if anyone is digging in, just know that we intentionally left some people out because it's just too much and we need to keep this podcast under 4 hours.
Yes. And just as a quick recap, there were more than 60 confessions during the initial investigation. But since 1947, there have been over 500 confessions. So there are suspects out the wazoo.
500
like-
separate people came forward and said, it was me.
It was me. I did it. Or I knew that. Yep.
The phenomenon of the false confession. I'm not talking about a coerced confession or I've been in an interview room for 8 hours and didn't ask for a lawyer confession.
Right.
I'm not
Just
talking about those.
legitimately fake.
I'm talking about the people that come forward and say
Obstruction of
"I did
justice.
it." Yeah. What is the mental motivation? Is it like you never amounted to anything in your life and you're going to show your mother you'll amount to something, or is it shock value, or is it that they have fantasized about doing something like that and they want?
I don't know.
What is it?
I am also fascinated by this, Olivia. Like this case, this happened in the 40s. It's still unsolved.
Yep.
80 something years later. I do wonder if so many people confess to it, much like some other high profile cases, because it was so glamorous and unsolved. It's like, I want to attach myself to. It's like, I don't want to confess necessarily to just like a random civilian who hasn't made the news that nobody knows. Like, that's not a good society. That doesn't make me famous. But if I confess to like a celebrity murder, like, ooh, like now it's now it's juicy.
So bizarre.
Over 500 people confessed to this.
Correct. Yes, it's me. I did it. But we're going to start with some of the ones that we've already talked about who were interviewed by the police. And then we'll get into ones that maybe weren't interviewed, but later have been thought to have been the murderer. So we're going to start with our friend, Robert Red Manley.
Okay,
remember him?
Remind us who they are.
Okay, so Red was the red-headed pipe clamp salesman that first met Short in late 1946 when he struck up a conversation with her on a street corner. Remember, he had a wife at home who had just had a baby.
Is this the one that says, I want to know if I love my wife, so I'm going to hang out with you for a little while?
That's him.
Go on.
You got it.
Precisely.
Yep. That guy.
Yeah, and he had also, like, again, stranger on the street. This was not someone she had a relationship with, just full stranger danger.
When they first met, but then they had a relationship afterwards, even though he did confess to the police it was strictly platonic, but we know it isn't. Come on.
I met a woman on the street that I
thought was beautiful. Yeah, specifically the street corner, right?
No, that's an important part, I feel like, of the story.
Yes. And Red is the last person believed to have seen her alive, other than like random workers at the Biltmore Hotel. He is the last person that saw her alive because he dropped her off at the Biltmore on January 9th.
Gave her
that's
a platonic fist bump as he drove away. He said,
see you, friend.
See you later, pal.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm imagining he's like wearing like the Homburg hat.
Yeah.
He's just like giving Humphrey Bogart
Yeah.
and gives a fist bump. That's
bump.
the image in my
See ya,
mind right
kid.
now.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for the great conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. So the police did consider him a suspect, obviously, but he passed a polygraph test. In fact, he passed 2. Now, we know that those are not admissible in court, blah, blah, blah. But he's probably pretty stressed out considering he cheated on his wife who
And now she
just
knows.
had a
'cause-
baby.
Yeah.
Now she knows because she's been brought in. He's been brought in for this. So I would say maybe it's okay. But he did spend the rest of his life struggling with his mental health. His wife had him committed in 1954 because he was hearing voices.
Ooh.
That
Back
same
when you
year.
could do that.
Right? Back when you could be like, just get in there. I'm done.
Like,
You.
hey, he's being a little weird. Can we have him
Hey,
committed
remember
for a
when
minute
you
so I can have a break?
wanted to see if you loved me and slept with that woman Elizabeth Short and then she ended up murdered? I'm putting you in the, get in there.
Also, not just murdered,
Mutilated.
and bisected,
Yes.
gruesomely. Just that's a lot. Imagine finding out that your spouse or
Oh
your
my
significant
God.
other has cheated on you by being contacted by the police. Not just for a murder, but for this sensational murder that has made headlines. And I'm sure they're like throwing photos at
Yeah.
him of the
Ugh.
crime scene. Like, can
Absolutely.
you imagine?
And
Ugh.
she just thinks he's out like selling pipe clamps. He's a pipe clamp salesman. She's like, what
This
the
sounds like a euphemism, and I know it's
That is so good.
Someone
pipe
it's gonna be
clamp.
me. I'm gonna make a logo for this pipe clamp business, and it's
Please
gonna
do.
be a merch item.
We'll put it on a shirt for
Pipe
merch
clamps.
later.
Pipe clamps.
Write it down.
we bill by the hour. Wink.
I love it. So his wife had him committed in 1954 because he was hearing voices. And that same year, doctors gave Manley sodium pentothal, otherwise known as truth serum,
Yes.
and asked him about the Black Dahlia case. And Red stuck to his story. So
So illegal now. Like you cannot.
it's so illegal now. I'm sure everything they did in that mental institution is illegal
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
You can't even have your spouse committed anymore, friends. Like, you
I
can't do
know.
anything.
Ah, the good old days.
The good old days of forced lobotomies and sodium pentothal.
That
Well
was
done. Well done.
JFK.
So Robert, he was let go.
I know
So
what
he
time it
was cleared and he died on January 9th, 1986. Exactly 39 years after he left Elizabeth Short at the Biltmore Hotel
To the day?
with a cloud of suspicion still on him. Yeah, to the day.
Ooh.
Was this? I mean, it sounds like I'm doing math. He was not young at this point.
No,
but was this in any way a mysterious death?
No,
Huh.
not that I'm aware of. But yeah, it's interesting, right?
He was here.
But
Yeah.
people still kind of were like, did he do it? Did he do it? Because the only thing
Oh.
really that he passed the polygraph test.
You can do it.
You know,
if
But
you
there was
are-
no DNA then. And,
Right.
Right.
Okay,
If
so
you're
that's
if-
one
if you're a
theory.
pure
So
sociopath.
yeah,
like,
if you're a sociopath,
polygraph,
you can,
schmolygraph.
you can usually
Yeah,
outsmart.
absolutely
those,
you can.
but,
Yeah.
Okay, so that's
Oh,
one
okay.
theory.
So that's one
Do
theory.
we want to do like, let's talk about them, and then we could like vote on our favorite, or should we?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Okay, we can.
Let me get through them because there's
yeah,
some interesting
we'll
ones
debunk
and there's
them at the
some
end.
also that kind of maybe merge a little bit, which
Ooh.
we'll get to it. So
It's gonna get
I'm gonna-
confusing.
yes, it will. So
I'm
I'm
gonna
going to
eat
throw
milk.
back really quick. In our first episode, I talked about Los Angeles Herald reporter Aggie Underwood, and I was like, hey, remember her? So Red Manley told his story to Aggie. And while that was happening, she just let him talk. She didn't interrupt him. Red said he picked Beth up on a San Diego street corner early in December. He confessed that the night he spent with Beth on a roadside motel was strictly platonic and concluded with, I'll never pick up another dame as long as I live. I hate this guy. Anyway, the story ran in
There
the
is nothing
Herald
like
with the
a
headline.
dame.
Yeah,
Then
I'll
in
add that to our
the
playlist.
world.
I was
So-
waiting for it, Olivia.
Yeah, she always pulls through. The story ran in the Herald with the headline "Night in a Motel," and Aggie got the byline, and she was the only Los Angeles reporter to get a byline on the Black Dahlia case. So
Wow.
this is very interesting. The morning following her interview, her editor yanked Aggie off of the case. She said, the city editor benched me and let me sit in the local room without a blessed thing to do. So for the next 2 days, she didn't have any assignments. She actually sat there and like embroidered, just like was like, screw you, I'm going to do this. On day 3, preparing for more embroidery, the assistant city editor told her that because of an overnight decision, she was to go back to LAPD homicide and continue working leads on the case. She barely had time to pull out her notebook before management pulled her off of the case again, this time permanently. Aggie's new assignment, city editor. A woman in 1947, a city editor. Nobody was more shocked than Aggie. She deserved the promotion, sure. She'd been in the business for 20 years. She knew what she was doing, but she was one of the first women in the United States to hold a city editorship on a major metropolitan daily.
But
She did a phenomenal job. She loved it, but she was suspicious of it.
Yeah. Did they promote her to get her out of the way?
Exactly. One of the conspiracy theories that surrounds her Elizabeth Short's murder involves Aggie. Some believe she got too close to a solution to the murder, and the killer or killers arranged to have her promoted out of the way. That means whoever murdered Elizabeth Short had enough juice with the Herald to influence personnel decisions. Exactly. And she did say, like, she was really suspicious of it, but she was like, I'm not going to turn down a promotion when women aren't getting promoted. So she took it.
That's also, I'll say, a nicer way of getting rid of somebody or getting them off the case.
Yeah.
As opposed to like,
she could have been murdered.
You out of or like, we ran you out of town or whatever. We fired you.
Yeah.
They promoted her. Yeah. All right. Our next suspect, Mark Hansen. Oh, by the way, in our drive, and we can put them on our Instagram, I have everybody's pictures. So if you want to go look at them, they're up there.
Oh, let's see who looks like a murderer.
Perfect.
There you, exactly. Look at those dead eyes.
Olivia just judging books by their covers.
Mark Hansen, as we remember, is the guy that owned the Florentine Gardens, co-owner, and Elizabeth Short lived with him for a short time and also lived in the apartments that he owned.
He had the wife and the girlfriend.
And the girlfriend.
And Elizabeth.
And Elizabeth was friends with the girlfriend. Yes. So on January 25th, so this is 10 days after they found Elizabeth Short's body, Hansen was interviewed again by the police in his home. He said, several girls have rented rooms here at the house, but I never went out with them. Pause for.
Yeah, we stayed in, but
pause. Yeah, she had lots of dates. There was a language teacher that I know of, and with other persons, mostly hoodlums who I wouldn't even let in my house. He also indicated that a memorandum and calendar book was missing. Remember, with her things, there was a calendar, a book that had his name embossed in gold in the front. He goes, I believe Miss Short stole that. So he said that. Then he said that there was a time when she had like come over to the house and ask if she could leave her suitcases there. Then she just like kept staying. This is his account. But he didn't let her come in. She just kept staying. And then he moved her over to these other apartments, right? It was one night that she was sitting and crying at these other apartments, the ones that he owned. She was sitting and crying about being scared, one thing and another, I don't know. She said she was going to Oakland to a
blah,
sister.
Blah, blah, female emotion.
Blah, blah, female, right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, from there, she wanted to know if she couldn't come back there when she came from Oakland. So come back to the house. She said she was scared. But he never mentioned what Short was scared of. He may never have asked because he seems like a truly upstanding guy.
Up guy.
But he may have known and just didn't say anything because he was mixed up with some pretty dark people like Mickey Cohen and Bugsy Siegel, who came to his club all the time. So just because I think it's important that we know this about him. He was let off, you know, they were like, okay, bye. We don't have any evidence, whatever. But in 1949, Lola Titus, a taxi dancer at one of his clubs, shot Mark Hansen while he was shaving in his bathroom.
Oh.
Casual? Like just
casual. The bullet pierced a lung and missed his heart by 0.7 of an inch and was later found embedded in the wall. Lola said afterwards, I made up my mind that he was either going to love me, marry me, or take care of me, or I was going to kill him. So she did. Don't mess with people's hearts, Mark Hansen. He got shot by one of his taxi dancers.
And all that jazz.
I am speechless.
Wow.
I just thought it was important that he got his,
he
come up.
Continued. The lesson is he continued to be a dog.
Correct, and that's what happened.
I'll just say too. not that, who knows what goes on behind closed doors of someone else's relationship. This man looks like a thumb. I
Doesn't
don't
he?
know if
He does look
if
like a
he
thumb, much like
if
Dan
he
Wozniak.
That's
if
one
he
of my
wasn't
favorite
like,
things
love
that
me
you
or
say,
marry
Ashley,
me,
because
I wouldn't.
Me too. That's my favorite insult Ashley has. A thumb.
it looks like a thumb.
So those are the two suspects that we know kind of the most about as far as our story went, right? Then there's a
Okay.
gentleman named Jack Anderson Wilson. He has 3 names. That's all I'm going to say.
Everyone has 3 names if they're a serial
That's
killer.
right.
Exactly.
Thing. So this suspect, Jen, you're
Yes.
right. He does have 3 names.
3
Even
names.
even in the image file, I see 3 names here.
And he has
also
a widow's peak.
He does have a widow's peak.
Serious widow's peak, which used to be one of the things like back in the olden days. They're like, you are more likely to be a murderer if you
Yes.
have a widow's peak. This was
Dracula
the
had
thing.
a widow's peak, you know?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
why Dracula was illustrated that way back in the day, because
Yeah.
they're like, this is a sinister
It's evil.
characteristic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's evil.
So
This guy also doesn't look great, though.
he doesn't
I'm
look
just gonna
great.
say it.
So
Not great, Bob. Yeah.
there are a lot of books. Here's what I've learned while researching the Black Dahlia. If you have a theory, you can write a book. And
Okay.
every book is a
Just in
different
general
theory.
or about the
Just
Black
in there, well, about the Black Dahlia,
Oh, okay.
maybe in general, unsolved crimes, but the Black Dahlia specifically, because there are numerous, and Jack Anderson Wilson being one of them, suspects that like have an entire book, and this is why he did it, and blah blah blah.
Really?
Yes. Now, some of these suspects also were questioned by the police. Some of them weren't because they couldn't be found or it didn't happen until later. But there's a book called Severed, The True Story of the Black Dahlia Murder
Oh,
by
God.
John Gilmore.
What a
Mhm.
name, Severed.
Um, and he points to Jack Anderson Wilson, who is an alcoholic drifter. So Gilmore actually interviewed this guy in the early 80s. And Wilson apparently divulged details about the murder that only the killer would have known, including knowledge of a supposed vaginal defect that would have prevented Short from having sexual intercourse. This is only in this book, and the autopsy reports have never been fully released, so we don't know if it's true. A few days before his
Olivia's
pending
face.
arrest, Wilson died in a hotel fire. So Wilson had a lot of other crimes.
Yeah, because this photo of him is clearly a mugshot.
Yes.
He's-
He had a limp, which is important because that figures into other theories. And
Okay.
he was really tall. He was like 6'4".
Okay.
Very tall, especially for the time. Yeah.
Yes. And there was another murder that happened, I think it was a few months after the Black Dahlia, which was not the same MO, but grisly. And there was something about a light like in the hallway that had to be turned. And this guy was like tall enough that he could have done it to make it black. And there was a thought
Yeah.
that he did it. And maybe there was a Black Dahlia tie-in. But I think at this point, the police were just reaching for anything.
Someone somewhere was also killing people. Maybe this is
Yes.
a guy. I'll just say too, along the lines of like, we got this guy's looking really good because we've got the
Mhm.
3 names. We've got a widow's
Mhm.
peak.
Mhm.
This photo is a mugshot. And I will also add this mugshot, listeners, says it was taken in Oregon, which as we know is one of
Pacific
one
Northwest.
of the places, the Pacific Northwest, man. Serial killers do love that area.
They
So
Yeah.
he's got a couple marks against him in my
He
book
does.
at this
Yeah.
point.
He
Yeah.
also, like I said, had a limp. And one of the witnesses that saw, again, back from the earlier episode, there was a black sedan that was there and they saw someone walking with a limp. John Gilmore, like his interview with him, it's interesting. He's very drunk. Jack Anderson Wilson is very drunk when he's giving this interview, but
Well,
it's interesting. There's some stuff that comes out. So
okay. Now, what's his connection with her, though?
there isn't. He's just like a
Oh.
drifter.
Okay.
Just a
Okay.
bad
So
He's a
that was
criminal
dude in the
drifter.
area.
criminal drifter. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
He didn't meet her on a corner.
No.
He didn't. Okay. Was he hired by someone?
Well,
Okay.
or he could have been hired. See, that's the thing. I'll just go ahead and say this. I think it was more than one person.
Okay.
Who were
Involved.
involved or
Involved,
were the
because
murderers.
There
Yeah.
are the
I think
cuts and
yes.
the dissection were it was a doctor. Like it had to be somebody that had medical
Right.
knowledge. But
'Cause like we said, that surgery was very specific
Yes.
to achieve that.
correct. And then but the blows to her face and the cuts to the upper part of her body were very like rage filled. Doesn't mean it had to
Disorganized.
be like personal necessarily. It was just somebody with a lot of rage. But I think there was more than one person involved.
well, and the positioning
Mm.
right? And the
Right.
location, like one, it would
Yeah.
have taken at least two people
Yeah.
to do what was done, and obviously there was cleanup, and not one
Yeah.
person could have.
Exactly.
It seems like not impossible, but an awful lot of work for someone to have done alone.
Yeah.
Correct.
And again, like you said, Jen, to have the, I'll say almost like Jekyll and Hyde
Yeah.
swing between, you have the knowledge and the control and the precision to bisect somebody, which, as we said in the first episode, it's really unusual even in dismemberment cases to bisect a torso because
Right.
it's so difficult
Hard to
and
do,
tedious,
yeah.
and you need like surgical knowledge. But then to have that contrasted against like just the rage, it does sort of feel almost like one person kind of just like went crazy. We know the blows to the head and the
Right.
to her face is what killed her. But then later it was like, well, maybe I'll call so and so and
Mhm.
help me, or maybe force them.
Yeah.
Question
Maybe.
mark, to like, I don't know. That does feel like
Yeah.
you got somebody else in the mix, perhaps, or
Yeah.
you are just a man of many talents.
Well,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they said that her time of death was sometime like late the 14th, early the 15th, and she was found in the morning of the 15th. So like wasn't a lot of time to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
That's very true.
Also, I feel like I also agree that there was more than one person, and I think that one was a surgeon, obviously, and
Yeah. It had to be.
whether they were practicing or not, like they had that
Right.
schooling,
Sure.
right? They had the background. But I feel like they
Mhm.
would have been part of this from the beginning, because if it
Mhm.
was
Okay.
rather than like a cleaner situation, because if you brought
Mhm.
in somebody to clean up something, like
Mhm.
usually the dismemberment is so that the body disappears, right? And is gone,
Right.
not
Yeah,
he-
it's true.
to display and showcase. So it seems like that was part of the intent.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
Okay, next.
Here we go. So here's an interesting one. This gentleman's name is Leslie Dillon. I shouldn't call him a gentleman.
This male presenting person.
Yes.
So this theory comes from a book from British author. Her name is Eatwell is her last name. It's called Black Dahlia, Red Rose, The Crime, Corruption, and Cover-Up of America's Greatest Unsolved Murder. So she claims that the real culprit was Leslie Dillon, a man who police briefly considered the primary suspect, but
Hmm.
ultimately let go. He was a bellhop. However, she
Oh.
also claimed there was much more to the case besides the killer himself. So according to Eatwell, Dillon, who worked as a bellhop, murdered Short at the behest of Mark Hansen, a local nightclub and movie theater owner who worked with Dillon.
Got it.
Hansen was another suspect that had been let go, and the owner of the address book that had been mailed to the Examiner. He later claimed that he gave the address book to Short as a gift. And he claimed that she stole it. So, his story changed a little.
Yeah. I'm looking at his photo,
So, yeah.
which is
He looks
odd.
like a Leslie, first of all.
First of
Yeah, he
all,
does, right?
He does look like
He's giving Leslie.
He's giving
bringing
Leslie.
What's he doing with his
hands?
I don't know.
It's like he's straightening a bow tie that he's not wearing.
And he doesn't have. I know.
Other than him being the
Mhm.
bellhop, it's just sort of like, hey, you were in her orbit of acquaintances in the vicinity. Was
Mhm.
there anything else
Right.
about him, sort of criminally speaking, that made him a likely suspect?
Did he
Yes.
have medical training?
He has some interesting background. So,
Okay.
here we go.
Okay.
I'm going to get through because I did a little bit on Hansen, but we've already talked about that. Eatwell, the author, alleges that Hansen was infatuated with Short, which we talked about, that he was like into her and she was like, no
Obsessive.
thanks.
Right.
Came on to her. She rebuffed him. So then supposedly Hansen says to Dillon to take care of her.
Yeah.
Hansen apparently
she
knew
rejected
that
him.
Dillon, yes,
Okay.
that Dillon was capable of murder, but didn't realize just how deranged he was.
Okay.
You're welcome. All right.
This is a lo-
Previously,
all right.
here we go. Leslie Dillon had worked as a mortician's assistant,
Oh.
where he could have potentially learned how to bleed a body dry.
Okay, that feels like a smoking gun.
That's interesting, right?
Interesting.
Eatwell also discovered from police records that Dillon knew details about the crime that had not yet been released to the public. One detail was that Short had a tattoo of a rose on her thigh, which had been cut off. Like that was the square on her thigh that was gone. And
Okay.
shoved into her vagina. That was the piece of skin that was
Ew.
gone from her leg. And so,
Hate that.
for his part, Dillon claimed to be an aspiring crime writer and told authorities that he was writing a book about the Dahlia case, which never materialized. Despite all evidence pointing to him, Dillon was never charged with the crime. Eatwell claims he was released due to Mark Hansen's ties to some of the cops at the LAPD. While Eatwell believes the department was corrupt to begin with, she also thinks that Hansen contributed largely to its corruption by exploiting his ties to certain officers, which we went over. He absolutely did. Right? Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm like looking at his photo while you're telling this, and I'm like,
So there's a little more. Another discovery that lent itself to Eatwell's theory was a crime scene found at a local motel. During her research, Eatwell came across a report by Astor Motel owner Henry Hoffman. The Astor Hotel was a small 10-cabin facility near the University of Southern California. On the morning of January 15th, 1947, that is the morning that Elizabeth Short was found,
right?
He opened the door to one of his cabins and found the room covered in blood and fecal matter. In another cabin, he discovered that someone had left a bundle of women's clothes wrapped up in brown paper, which was also stained with blood.
What?
Instead of reporting the crime, Hoffman simply cleaned it up.
What?
He had been arrested 4 days earlier for beating his wife and didn't want to risk another run-in with the police.
Come
Oh
on.
my God.
Eatwell believes that the motel is where Elizabeth Short was murdered. Eyewitness reports, though uncorroborated, claim that a woman who resembled Short had been seen at the motel shortly before the murder. But again, the 9th was the last time anybody for sure saw her.
Now, is there actual, other than the just word of mouth, is there actual documentation that all this blood was found? Or this is just the story?
No, her theories have never been proven. And because everyone involved in the original Black Dahlia murder case is most likely dead by now.
Right.
Because we've got this asshat cleaning stuff up. He's like,
Yep.
oh no, I hit my wife and now I've got a hotel room full of blood. Guess I better just clean this up so it doesn't look bad on me because I suck. Like,
yeah.
What?
So that one's very interesting to me.
And if it wasn't the location, somebody else got murdered.
What did happen there?
Yeah.
Right. Something happened.
Something happened.
Something horrible.
Still report it.
Yeah.
Also,
unless this guy is just saying things again because people, like 500 people confess to crimes.
Right.
Like, who knows?
Right.
I know, but man, that's a lot. I'm liking Leslie for this now for a variety of reasons, and at the same time, I'm not totally convinced about the dismemberment. If this was a slightly more straightforward, just a murder, maybe, but just the dismemberment also, if this is not someone who otherwise sort of has a violent underworld type life.
Yeah, was there anything else? Did he ever get arrested for anything in the future, or did he just kind of fade?
Not that I have. I could be totally wrong, but not from my research. Again, I could have we would have had a 5-part episode if I would have dove into everybody.
Even as a hitman, so we've got what's his bucket being like, get rid of her. Like if
I
can't have
Hansen,
her, no one will. Okay, yeah. So Hansen's like, get rid of her. Cool. That to me says just like a gunshot from a shadow. Like that's what that says. This is so much, like it's so much work, and like we said, like might have even needed a buddy because this was an awful lot to do all this quickly, to transport her, to stage her, like all of it. It's again not impossible. He's got the mortician's assistant training, and at the same time just feels kind of like overkill to me for this guy who's just a dude. Otherwise.
and it seems like, I think I said this last time, it seems like there was a message attached. This was sending a message to someone or a group.
Intentionally shocking.
And I feel like the wounds and the face cutting, the Glasgow smile. I was going to say the Moscow Mule. I forgot what it was called. Not a Moscow Mule.
That's a drink.
Smile.
It's a delightful drink. I'll make you one sometime.
Different thing.
That to me it was saying something, which is why I kind of from the beginning I kind of was drifting towards the mafia background. This guy is interesting. I wonder if he perhaps was involved because he had a very specific set of skills.
There's a part of me that feels like in a way, it's like Murder on the Orient Express. They all did it.
Yeah.
You know,
It's all 6 of them. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So the most interesting one, Orson Welles.
I can't wait to hear
This is
this.
the one you said last week,
Yeah.
and I was beside myself. Citizen Kane.
I know.
Tell me more about this. 'Cause
War
this
of the
is brand new. I
Worlds.
had not
Fascinating.
even heard this name in connection with this case.
Also, I love the
How
photo, Jen, that you put in.
Thank you.
Him
Isn't
with a
isn't it great?
cigar sticking out of his
Yeah.
mouth, giving a side eye that's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's like the look
Yeah.
on his
Are
face.
you kidding me? You're bringing me in. Yeah.
Yeah.
peak
Gotta love.
Orson Welles.
Peak
too, I'll
Orson
say,
Welles,
with
right?
with a scarf and a beard.
Yes,
just
fabulous.
Yeah,
Okay,
the,
you-
the man,
'cause
a
you
man
have
of the
to.
theater. Yeah.
So, of all the Black Dahlia suspects listed here, perhaps the most surprising one and the most famous, acclaimed director and actor Orson Welles. So, this theory about the famous filmmaker was from a 1999 book called Childhood Shadows, The Hidden Story of the Black Dahlia Murder. See, again, just write a book. We're going to
God.
write a book, ladies. All right. So, this woman who wrote this book, she grew up with Elizabeth Short in Massachusetts.
Oh.
Started researching the case. She wanted to dispel myths about Short being a sex worker and a nobody. So her research led her to believe that Orson Welles could have been behind the Black Dahlia murder. Well, she said his name came up a few times.
What does
It
that
just-
mean? What does that mean?
I don't know. It was just his name just kept cropping up.
You know who else's name comes up time to time? George Clooney. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
that he's a psycho.
Did you do it, George?
murderer.
Ladies, we've talked about a couple episodes ago. We talked about Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman an awful
I know.
lot. Are they going to be implicated in our eventual deaths?
And our
Like,
eventual-
You know-
well, in mine, because I light up a room. So
Jen, you gotta knock that off.
listen, if Christian Bale or Hugh Jackman take me out, it's worth it.
Christian Bale's like deep into research for his next role.
His next American Psycho.
American Psycho Part 2.
All right, so back to Orson Welles.
In Hollywood, and I think this is part of the persona, but was also known to be like extremely intense, just
Yes.
Right.
intense, domineering, maybe kind of a bully. As
Like a
I would
bully,
think
like
so, yeah.
director.
So this woman believed that Welles may have had a condition, a disorder often attributed to serial killers called diphasic personality.
Oh, yeah, I've heard this. Yep.
Yeah, often attributed to serial killers, in which someone can become violently aggressive when frustrated. She also points to a magic act that Welles performed in the 1940s, in which he pretended to cut women in half, which all magicians do, and mannequins Welles designed with a mutilated face like Short's for a film called The Lady from Shanghai in 1947.
They were not mutilated. It was just like a
Well,
weird fever dream.
They were supposed to be. Apparently, the mutilated mannequins were not used in the film. She pointed out that Welles designed them 3 months before the murder and then like pulled them after the murder happened.
This is the dumbest theory I think I've ever heard.
Big old, she's gonna hurt her shoulder reaching. Like just
I know. So there you go. That's Orson Welles. The fact that he cut women in half in his had a bad
anyone-
reputation as a director
Has anyone
and
seriously
had
looked?
mannequins in a movie.
Has anyone seriously looked at Harry Houdini? I mean, that guy.
Yeah, because he faked
Olivia,
his
he
death,
was
right?
dead.
He
Yeah, exactly.
He's
he
still
came back
alive,
from
like
beyond the
Elvis.
grave.
listen. I have a theory, and I'm going to write a book. It was Harry Houdini.
Harry
It's, I was Jen. I'm a little disappointed. I was really hoping
I
for some
know,
sort
I
of
thought
smirking.
there was-
No,
Yeah,
it's not.
like-
It's literally somebody was like, I'm gonna write a book about Orson Welles did it because he cut this mannequin in half and had mannequins in
I'll
his movie.
Also say in the same breath, I'm a little upset that Alfred Hitchcock, who at this time was a flourishing,
You know
had a
what?
flourishing career
So right.
in Hollywood.
Hey,
Where was Hitchcock? in
that's our
this?
theory.
That's it.
There it is.
That's it.
That's our theory.
Our theory is it was
Alfred
Alfred
Hitchcock did it.
And if anyone knew how to
Yeah.
get away with a murder, it was Alfred Hitchcock.
Right?
It was-
that silhouette, and a silhouette is black, like the Black Dahlia. Done.
Jeez.
Well, I mean, I reached about as far as they did for
Yeah,
Orson
well,
Welles, so.
Fair.
Hitchcock, he was around. He was
He was
making a
around.
movie.
Yeah. Interesting, right? So, all right, we're moving on. This one is is a doctor, not my favorite doctor for the crime.
Okay.
George Knowlton. There is no picture of him. I did not find a picture of George.
Damn it.
So, Janice Knowlton thinks that the Black Dahlia killer was someone close to home. Her own father,
What?
George Knowlton. There's more than one of those.
Okay.
This isn't the best one.
Ashley's head is in her hands. What's her reason?
Okay, well, first of all, would you like to know the name of the book?
My father did it.
I feel like this is going to tell us
Basically,
a lot.
Daddy was the Black Dahlia killer. I mean,
I love that
the
she goes
title.
for daddy. Like, we're going full.
Daddy.
Father
So-
was the Black Dahlia.
Yes.
There was no.
God
Was there
damn
no
it.
editor involved in this book?
This was before self-publishing, so I mean, she got it published.
I mean, talk
Somebody
about
approved
like
this.
not that you want to bury the lead, but you kind of want to leave a little bit of a
I'll leave
You
a
know,
little bit of
little
the thing.
little mystery.
So, as Janice wrote in her book, she started to remember things she believed she'd suppressed in the late
Jesus
1980s.
Christ. Okay.
What
This one's
year- I was gonna
wild.
say, what year was this? Because
The 80s.
this whole the whole repressed
Yeah.
memory of like therapists
Yeah.
run amok, and not good therapists, because therapy is great and important and wonderful.
Yes,
but
when you have the
I'm
right
in it.
ones.
Yeah.
there are or have been certainly in the past bad, disreputable, manipulative therapists who've done the whole, I think you might have a repressed memory trauma, and basically fed people
them.
false memories
Yep.
that absolutely never happened. So then essentially you're traumatizing people because you are manipulating them to believe that, like, oh, your father molested you, when there is no evidence of this. And like this was a phenomenon and a big problem in, I'll say, like the 70s and 80s. This was it manifested in a bunch of different ways. Like some of it was like crimey like this. There was also a lot of like faux cult stuff and sort of like satanic rituals. where it was
Yeah,
like,
I was going to say satanic panic. Yeah.
abuser.
Right. So this is how it goes. You know, this
Okay.
is all, you know, alleged, but this is in her book, that her father was long dead, but Janice began to recall him molesting her, and a disturbing memory of him murdering a young woman she knew as Aunt Betty.
Oh, come on. What?
Janice claimed
Okay.
that she saw her father beat Elizabeth Short to death with a claw hammer at their family home in Westminster, California, when she was just 10 years old. What's more,
The family home.
yes, what's more, she wrote that her father forced her to accompany him as he disposed of the Black Dahlia's body.
Why?
No.
Why?
No.
Most have discounted, Janice claims. Her own stepsister called Janice's book trash.
Don't hold back there, Cheryl. Tell us what you really think.
So apparently she said to the Los Angeles, I know,
Trash.
to the Los Angeles Times,
What-
she
what?
said she believed it, but it wasn't reality. I know because I lived with her father for 16 years. He could be meaner and ornerier than heck, but he wasn't a killer.
You know, like on the back
That's
of
what I just
the
said.
back
Yeah.
of books, you know, on the back of books, there's like reviews and quotes. So on the back of this book,
Yeah.
one was trash.
So
But-
it said, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. The whole like playing to memories. Okay, you were a child. It was in the family home. Feels like a lot. Like, why would you bring someone to your family home to murder them with a claw hammer while your children are home? Weird choice, but
Weird choice,
okay.
man.
But then the detail of, yeah, I was definitely in the car when he dumped the body. It's like,
Yeah, I
okay,
had
you
to
lost
help
me,
him.
sweetie. Like, I'm sorry.
She says that she had to help him. Like she was the second person to like carry the
Oh
body.
my god.
No. No.
Now listen.
No.
Repressed memories are a thing. That is
They are. They
absolutely a
absolutely
thing.
are.
They sure can be. Yep.
When they're not being fed to you by a bad
Right.
therapist.
And there's usually like behavioral issues that would go along
Yes.
with like repressed
It's-
memories of
Mhm.
molestation or something.
yes.
That flags it way before
Right.
all
Yes.
of a sudden you're a
Right.
functioning person, and then one fine day in your 40s your therapist is like, what about?
Yeah.
I'm just like, the detail, like the visual of like a
Yeah.
5th grade girl
Yes.
in the 40s in a dress, because let's be real,
Yeah,
they
because
wouldn't
she's
have given
wearing
her
a dress.
pants.
Yep.
In a dress, just lifting part of a corpse out of a car
Hey, honey, help me lift
In the-
these legs.
in the wee hours
Of the
like,
morning.
Oh,
Mhm.
we'll give you the side with the feet, not the side with the internal organs spilling
Right,
out,
I'll take those,
because
honey. So apparently the Los Angeles police are aware of Janice's claims, but they've come to the same conclusion. The things that
Bullshit.
she's saying are not consistent with the facts of the case.
So they
So they
basically
said in
Janice.
1991.
they said trash.
Basically. Yes. She also said, like, she and her co-author, like, stick to it. Like, you know, that George, the police talked about George who drove a tan car. There was no tan car. It was a black Ford sedan.
Right.
Twice. The witnesses said black. So
Black
I don't know
Ford
why
sedan.
there's a tan car and whatever. So Mafia. All right, moving on.
Okay.
Patrick S. O'Reilly. The 1951 suspect list by LAPD Lieutenant Frank B. Jemison, who was one of the lead detectives on the case, includes Dr. Patrick Shane O'Reilly, an orthopedic surgeon in the Los Angeles area. O'Reilly was considered a suspect because of his association with two friends of Elizabeth Short, including Mark Hansen, having physically assaulted his secretary in 1939 and having surgically removed part of her right breast in similarity to the crime.
Wait. What? Why was he out? Why was he out in the world if he had done
Well,
that?
he was friends with Mark Hansen, and Mark Hansen had ties to the LAPD and the mob, so
Holy
I
shit.
hate it.
O'Reilly was also a suspect due to being a skilled surgeon. In 2023, it was found, so just last year, that
Okay.
O'Reilly had lied about his name and place of birth, actually being Patrick Trier from Kansas. Trier O'Reilly was found to have a long history of lying to the authorities and feeding false stories to the newspapers.
Okay.
So
Now this guy, we don't
Wait.
have a picture of him, but I feel like
We
he
don't.
I feel like he would look very Irish. Patrick
Uh-huh.
Shane O'Reilly.
Maybe a thumb.
Could
Maybe
be
a
a thumb.
Mm-hmm.
They're, you know,
Look at that thumb.
actually,
Right up to the lens. Look at that thumb. It looks just like that,
It's
actually.
like we have a photo of him.
Hey friends, Jen here, and we hope you're enjoying this episode of Life Upon the Wicked Stage. Just a few quick reminders. If you're looking for any of the visuals that we've mentioned in this or any episode of the podcast, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Wicked Stage Pod or Facebook at Life Upon the Wicked Stage. If you want more, please join our Patreon by searching the Wicked Stage Podcast. There you'll find ad-free episodes, videos of our recordings, mini-sodes, behind-the-scenes content, giveaways, and so much more. And the most important side note, if you like the show, please give us a nice rating wherever you listen. It sounds silly, but it's still the best way to get the word out and support us in this crazy podcast world. Well, lights are blinking, intermission's over, so grab those snacks and another drink and enjoy the rest of the show. Everyone, come on over to Patreon so you can see a photo of Patrick Shane O'Reilly, aka Ashley's thumb.
I drew a face on my thumb. Can you see it? I don't know if you can tell. There it is. He's smiling.
There it is. Hey, Patrick.
He's smiling because he got away with it.
O'Reilly, hello. All right.
Oh my god. Wait, so Jen, back up just a
Yeah.
second. So was he even really a doctor / orthopedist, or was this guy just straight up a liar and he was never a doctor, he was pretending and was just a notorious
Oh God, that I
charlatan?
don't know. I mean, it does say he was an orthopedic surgeon in the LA area, and he wasn't on the suspect list until 1951. So they
Okay.
continued this for a while. So it wasn't in 1947 he was on the list. It was a little later, but it does say he was an orthopedic surgeon. Whether or not he actually passed the tests or he just lied, I have no idea.
I feel like that's one of those you need to at least study for. I don't feel like you can
Yeah.
fudge an orthopedic surgeon's exam.
Mhm.
That seems
But he's working
like a
as an
bit
orthopedic
much.
surgeon. He would have known how to do that.
So he was working. He
Dissection.
wasn't just saying, "Oh yeah, I do this job."
Yeah,
and have never
from what
treated
I
anyone."
gather, he was a
Okay.
working orthopedic surgeon. Yeah.
Now, what
Got it.
is this one of those that has no actual like personal connection to her? It's just a like what is there?
Correct.
There's no connection. Okay.
Other than he had an association with Mark Hansen.
Oh, Mark Hansen. That's right. Yes. Okay.
So
It's all coming back to Mark.
isn't it?
Mm.
Interesting. See, that's what I
Again,
think too.
Mark Hansen is, I feel like, is one of the people who has had multiple, as we keep saying, like maybe there was more than one person involved, and he's
Mhm.
got multiple sort
Yeah.
of like, I'll say like
Connections.
henchman ties.
He
or-
has, shady association.
Very shady. And it's very
Yes.
interesting too, because yes, he does, but so does like the LAPD and
Well-
Hollywood and the mob. So that's the thing, is that it does keep coming back to him, but if it comes back to him, it's also coming back to the LAPD, and it's also coming back
Right.
to the mob.
Right.
Sure.
It's so messy. All right.
He's like the face of the brand.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the face. It keeps coming back to Mark because he's like out there. He runs the
Uh-huh.
nightclub. Everybody goes to the
Yeah.
nightclub, you know?
All right.
Walter Bailey. His picture's in there.
I see Walter.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's in like a
in it.
military.
Military uniform. So that's a little bit of a younger picture than of Walter. He was a little older I think he was in his 60s.
Looks like a short king, Walter. He's
I
giving.
don't know how tall
Very
he is.
small shoulders.
hmm
He's dainty.
He's
Walter
a
is
dainty man.
He's a dainty man, Walter Bailey. So, despite the Black Dahlia suspects considered over the years, LAPD detectives long suspected that Elizabeth Short's killer was a skilled surgeon. Yes, so do I. After all, people have had expertly cut her body in two, and Los Angeles Times columnist Larry Harnish believes that Walter Bailey was the doctor who did it.
Why? Tell us
When
more.
Harnish started digging into the case in 1996, he found some unsettling connections between Bailey and the Black Dahlia murder. As explained by the Washington Post, Bailey's daughter knew Short's sister. In fact, she was in Short's sister's wedding.
Okay, hold on.
Close.
Bailey's
Yeah.
daughter was in
Mhm.
Short's sister's
Was in Elizabeth's sister's wedding.
wedding.
They
Got
were
it.
one of Elizabeth's sisters,
Was friends with
and
his
Walter
daughter.
Bailey's daughter.
Okay.
were friends.
Friend of the
Okay.
family.
Friend of the family.
Right.
The doctor had an office near the Biltmore Hotel where Short was last seen, and her body was dumped a block away from Bailey's ex-wife's house.
I mean, that's a
What's
lot
more,
circumstantial. Yeah.
it's circumstantial. Bailey seemed to match the profile of Short's killer drawn up by the FBI profiler John Douglas. He was desensitized.
Dougie
This is the profile. So he was desensitized to blood, was comfortable with a knife, and although he had a medical degree, he did work with his hands rather than his brains. He also had a strong but troubled link to the immediate vicinity of the crime scene. So Harnish believes that the doctor, fresh from a divorce and suffering from undiagnosed Alzheimer's disease, may have crossed paths with Short somewhere near the Biltmore Hotel. After spending a few days together, Harnish suspects something happened to incite Bailey's rage. Possibly Short rebuffed him. Possibly she told a lie she'd told before about having a son who had died at a young age. That was something that she would tell sometimes.
I don't know about this one. I mean,
Yes.
the surgeon aspect is compelling.
Yes.
I
And the
just
fact that
don't-
they knew there was some connection to the family.
Yeah. I
Some
don't
connection
see
and-
why it went this far.
Well, so the kicker, of course, this guy says, is that Short's body was found a 45-second walk from where Bailey's ex-wife lived. So he says that it's possible Bailey dumped her there to terrorize his ex-wife. But I think that's a
Jeez.
lot to terrorize your ex-wife.
Really?
I feel like that's a bit much.
Like
That's a little
slashing
overkill.
tires.
Excuse the pun.
Slashing tires,
Mhm.
egging the house, maybe,
Mhm.
you know,
I was
maybe
gonna say it seems more plausible, Jen, that not so much like, yeah, fuck Cheryl. It was more about
Damn it, Cheryl.
a lot of killers will dump a body in an area that they are familiar with.
Yes,
That's true.
absolutely.
So it's like,
Mhm.
hey, I know there's this, vacant lot or what have you. I mean, it's, or, nearby, sort of, it is very unusual that they go out of their way and into
Right.
an unfamiliar part of town,
Yeah.
shall we say.
It's-
So that doesn't strike me as so much about the ex-wife. It's just like, oh, he knew this area because his ex-wife
Right.
lived there.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so the thing you said I found interesting is Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So how old
He was
was he?
suffering all the time. He was in his 60s.
And he was suffering Alzheimer's. I don't know.
Mhm.
Like Alzheimer's, a form of dementia. Yes, you
Yeah.
can change personalities. There can
You
be
absolutely can.
rage associated with it. But wow, this is quite the extreme,
Yes.
isn't it? Like,
Uh-huh.
hmm.
Not
I think
unheard
so.
of, people with various forms of dementia, and again, I think we know in 2024 we know more about all of that
Right.
than we ever have before, and at the
Yeah.
same time it's still like really poorly understood.
Mhm.
And not to say that I don't know that there's necessarily like well-documented instances of murder, dismemberment, but
Right.
certainly
Yeah,
people becoming
dismemberment, like
violent.
murder, maybe, like
Yeah,
accidental.
people becoming violent, whether they
Yeah.
mean to or not.
Yes.
Like, that's
Yes.
definitely a thing. So
Like
Sure.
hitting.
know.
If she had just been found with being bludgeoned in the head,
Right.
and beaten. Yeah.
but all the other stuff, I don't know if I could
Again,
attribute that to
a lot
Alzheimer's.
of work.
A lot of work.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
Just I would almost vote for Jen. You know, again, going back to the shady ties within the community thing,
Mhm.
is he a candidate for someone who was like brought in sort of after the fact?
Right.
Like, it's like, okay, you didn't do the primary part, but like, hey, we know you're a little off, but
Yeah.
you have a certain set of skills.
Yes,
you
you have a certain
just-
set of skills that we need.
Can you come in here and,
then-
like help us with this? And then and
Mhm.
as he's like leaving, he's like, oh, by the way, I know a good lot to like, you know,
Yeah.
like
But then would it
Is
just
that-
be
Yeah.
a weird
Yeah.
coincidence that that the families were connected? Is that just a coincidence?
Probably.
I go back to Jen though, whether it's this guy or not, and I think going back to real quick, our fave here, like Mark Hansen, who we keep
Yeah.
talking about,
Mhm.
I do feel like speaking to the overkill and the dismemberment and all of it, it does feel personal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And those types of things are not never, but rarely is that like a stranger murder situation. Like that is usually like that level is not the point. It's more about
Right.
like that's when we say like, you know, with serial killers, like there's a signature, they have a certain thing, like I strangle them and then I do
Right.
this and I put them all under my house, like friggin' you know, John Wayne Gacy.
Right.
It's
Correct.
not about the individual, it's about the whole, it's about the pattern, it's about like what the killer is getting out of it. Whereas
Mhm.
like this is so much and so specific. I would be floored if it was any of the people we've mentioned who were sort of like vague, disconnected people
Yeah.
sort of in the area. But I'm like, this feels very personal. And maybe even if like one person didn't do all of it, whoever orchestrated it or
Yeah.
was leading it,
Yeah.
I would just be shocked if it was a loose acquaintance. Like it
Right.
just, there has to be more history
I
here.
think-
There just has to.
Yeah, it's either personal or it's about the message that this left.
Right.
I think that's the piece I'm stuck on. That this was telling someone something.
Mhm.
This was telling
Yeah.
a group to keep their mouth shut, or this was telling somebody to
Mhm.
back off, or
Right.
something.
Mhm.
That's what okay. Who's next?
Next
Who else?
is George Hodel. Now, George Hodel is one of the most known. Is this the book that you have, Ashley? Yeah. So this is one of-
where they started. Yeah. They're like
Mhm.
Hodel.
Yes.
Why do I know
This
this
is one of
name? Is that
The most, because this is probably the most well-known theory.
okay?
For
Okay.
a lot of reasons. One, the person that wrote it is very vocal about it. I think it's one of the most far-fetched theories.
Oh,
There are some
Mm.
things that I'm like, okay, maybe he could have maybe been involved again, like on the periphery, doctor sort of thing. But there are just some things about it. And I will say I've changed my mind a little, because when I first heard the guy speak that wrote the book, I was like, dude, what are you talking about? And then I listened to some more and was like, okay, all right, maybe. But I'll tell you why I don't think so as we go through. So, George Hodel. Shortly after his father's death in 1999, now retired LAPD detective Steve Hodel was going through his dad's belongings when he noticed two photos of a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Elizabeth Short.
oh. Now
After
this-
discovering these
This is not
haunting
repressed
images,
memories, right? So this
no,
is
this
a little
is
bit more.
images.
Yeah. Okay.
I have the
Hard
images. I'm going to show
evidence.
you in a second.
Okay.
After discovering these haunting images, Hodel began using the skills he had gained as a policeman to investigate his own deceased father. Before we go any further, I'm going to show you these photos. They're in the drive too. This is one of the photos.
Oh snap!
Yeah.
This is another photo.
I can't make that
I
one
was
out.
like,
This is
I
Elizabeth
seeing-
Short.
am I seeing boob in the first one?
Yeah. What?
Yeah, probably.
A little bit.
One.
What's the other
It's
photo?
like a sultry.
Two.
It's like a sultry pose.
Oh, and she's got the flowers in
Three.
her hair. Wasn't she kind of known for wearing flowers in her hair?
She was.
Hmm.
It's like
But I
her
want you to
headshot.
look at the eyebrows and the brow bone.
Okay.
And the forehead, the size of the forehead. There's one.
That one definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Because she had quite a forehead.
These women, I personally do not believe these women look anything like this woman. Other than
the first
they
photo
have
you
dark
showed-
hair and light skin.
Yeah, the first photo you showed, Jen, I was like, wait a minute. And again, we're looking at this on a
Yeah, we'll show them on Instagram.
I'm looking at the actual photo.
Is it in there?
Where is it in the drive?
Maybe I didn't put it in there.
Because I was looking.
Maybe I put it in the other one.
Where
the first woman simply does not have enough forehead, and I say that
Correct.
as someone. This is not a hairstyling issue, and it's also like it's like a shadowy photo, Jen, that you're showing us like in the book here, but I'm like, again, sort of like us, but this is almost the equivalent of somebody showing a picture of Jen right now and saying, look at this photo of Ashley.
Yeah.
Correct.
And they're like, well, that person has full bang, and as we know, Ashley
yes
would never have a full bang. Ashley has no bang.
Yeah,
this is kind
no
of like
bang.
that.
No, it is. It very much is. And the second woman has a widow's peak. So I just, to me, and that's what his biggest, what really started his investigation. Now there are some other things that maybe kind of okay, maybe, but those pictures in particular, which is what he really based a lot on there.
So this was his smoking gun.
This was his smoking gun. Were these pictures?
He's like, who but the killer would have a photo? Yeah. So now that I'm looking at the photo, first woman with potential side boob, definitely not. This is even less like us than I thought. The second one is giving maybe, but the second one, I mean, not to knock this lady, who knows who she is. She's a little homely, like just similar features, but is a little more pinched looking.
I think Elizabeth Short had a very, very prominent forehead, very distinct eyebrows. They were straight,
and her eyes are a little too close together, like proportion wise.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. She's like pinched looking.
Oh yeah.
Not,
So anyway, Steve Hodel went through newspaper archives and witness interviews from the case, and even filed a Freedom of Information Act to obtain FBI files on the Black Dahlia murder. He was a cop, so like he had some different avenues maybe than we do. He also had a handwriting expert compare samples of his father's writing to the writing on some of the notes sent to the press from the alleged killer.
Oh yeah.
The analysis found a strong possibility that his father's handwriting matched, but the results were not conclusive. Also, he hired the writing expert.
Oh.
So, it's like in court, you bring in the expert witness.
Yeah. So of course they're going to be partial to your thing. Also, this is maybe somebody you know or have worked with before. They're like happy to help out a buddy. Handwriting is one of those things where we talked about the Zodiac a second ago, but this is one of those things where I feel like even within handwriting expert community, I know there are different schools of thought on handwriting and on I'm gonna get this wrong, but in the David Fincher Zodiac movie, this is a big plot point. And there are two different handwriting experts who the protagonist.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up the Zodiac, because Steve Hodel wrote another book called Most Evil, in which he claims that his father was also the Zodiac killer.
No.
So,
Eve, what happened with you and your dad?
That is what
Dad
made
did not
me
do
go.
all the murders.
Right. That's what made. Now, am I saying that there are not serial killers that have done horrific crimes all over? But when I read that, I was like, okay, pick one, pick a lane.
And he was also
You lost me, because I feel like now you're just grasping onto everything.
He was also Jack the
Golden
Ripper,
State Killer,
and Jack the Ripper, all of them, all of them.
So I was like,
and he did John Benny Ramsey.
It just went a little too far for me. I was like, they're not.
Oh, sweetie, no.
Yes, they're in California, but San Francisco and LA are not close. And anyway.
I also love, like, let's just assume for the sake of argument, like Daddy Hodel is in fact doing all the murder. I love that he's like, so he's his father at this point in the 40s,
right?
When 47. he's got enough, like he's spry enough to do this murder. And then fast forward fully 30 plus
Correct.
years, because the Zodiac did not kill until I believe 69 was the
69,
first.
70, yeah.
Yeah, it was like the first recorded Zodiac killing. So fully 32 years, he's still got enough pep in his step to fully be the Zodiac.
And he's like running around as the Zodiac. The Zodiac's on foot most of the time.
Zodiac was busy. Yeah, very hands-on.
So George Hodel's in there. I mean, he's got beady eyes. I don't like the way he looks, but that to me just was like, well, now I feel like you've lost me.
You've lost me
now. But
Dad's
I'm going to give you the rest.
Serial killers.
Yes. George Hodel was a doctor. He actually ran the county's venereal disease clinic.
Oh, cute.
So he was like, hey.
I mean, maybe
Wear a
he
condom.
had psycho vibe. Like maybe there were psycho vibes there. You know what I mean? And
listen, he wasn't a good guy. There are a lot of things. Okay, so additionally, Hodel searched his father's archives at UCLA. He found a folder full of receipts for contracting work on his childhood home. It was called the Sowden home, the Sowden house. It's very famous. It looks like a Mayan temple out in LA.
Oh,
he said he lives there. He lived there. And he says that's where the murder occurred. And in that folder, there was a receipt dated a few days before the murder for a large bag of concrete, the same size and brand as the concrete bag found near Elizabeth Short's body. So that's interesting.
That is interesting.
Okay.
That's interesting. By the time Hodel began his investigation, many of the police officers who originally worked on the case were already dead. However, he carefully reconstructed conversations these officers had about the case, and he wrote the book Black Dahlia Avenger: The True Story. So
that's the book I have.
That's the book Ashley has. So this is one of the biggest seller books of all times on the Black Dahlia case. Here's the thing. George Hodel was an asshole.
Okay.
He was on trial at one point during the Black Dahlia case, and he was a suspect in the Black Dahlia case. He was on the suspect papers. He was a suspect.
Okay.
During the time, he was on trial for incest, like forcing his daughter to have sex with him and other people.
Yes.
Okay.
So he was not a good person.
Predator.
He was a predator.
He was absolutely a piece of shit.
If the mustache didn't tell you from the jump, he has just not all mustaches, but my God, this mustache, just creeper. It's giving creeper.
Yeah.
George, make another choice, my guy, because you're advertising. You're like predator ? Call me. Yeah. It's not great.
So, not a good guy in any respect. And then there is this, which is also interesting. So, shortly after the murder, the LAPD had 6 main suspects. George Hodel was on their list.
Okay.
They bugged his home in 1950 so the police could monitor his activities.
3 years after.
Yeah. Much of the audio was innocuous, but one chilling exchange stuck out. 8:25 p.m., woman screamed again. It should be noted the woman was not heard before the screams. There was just screaming in the house. Later that day, George Hodel was overheard telling someone, realized there was nothing I could do, put a pillow over her head and cover her with a blanket. Get a taxi, expired 12:59. They thought there was something fishy. Anyway, now they may have figured it out, killed her.
Hold on.
He continued.
That's the recorded dialogue?
Yes.
In 1950.
In 1950. Then he continued. Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead.
Whoa.
That's the famous quote that I have heard and read for years. I didn't know the previous part about the miscellaneous person screaming and potentially you may or may not have just killed somebody else.
So I'm pretty sure in my assumption, and this is the secretary who he just killed.
Wait, that's an assumption or that happened?
That's my assumption. She was dead. I mean, his secretary was gone. Yes, she died, but he was never brought to trial for it or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Was she mysteriously killed, or are we not sure about this? I haven't read this book. Remember.
You know what? I'll look that up and get back to you.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you, listeners.
Yeah. So after this shocking revelation, which could support that he killed Elizabeth Short, and possibly also his secretary. I say for sure his secretary and possibly Elizabeth Short. I say the other way around. The Black Dahlia case still hasn't been officially closed, but Steve Hodel's like still investigating his father.
I mean, his
Like, to
father
this
definitely has what it takes to.
Yeah, I mean, he was a piece of shit for absolutely.
Does he have any ties to our number one dude?
Mark
And again,
Hansen.
going back to my accessory theory of not you as the primary orchestrator, but you as just a piece of shit who had some skills to help facilitate the dismemberment and staging portion. Like, could he have been like, no, I did not cause the death, but also like I knew Mark called me up and was like, hey, my guy, like, can you come help me like dismember a body in a fun and creative fashion? Like,
So
is that happening?
Possibly. There was an abortion ring in LA in this time because women were getting pregnant.
Okay.
And abortion was illegal.
Right.
Yep.
So there were doctors that were
That would
doing it illegally.
perform abortions. Okay.
Okay.
So George could have been a part of this abortion ring.
Okay.
There is a theory, it's something that I think may have happened, that Elizabeth Short may have been pregnant and may have gone to an abortionist.
Now, her
Maybe
uterus
she
was
died?
missing, right?
It was taken out. Now, the autopsy said she wasn't pregnant, but there was no uterus. So how can you
know?
tell?
Yeah, she wasn't pregnant because there's no uterus. Yay! Like,
Right.
Well, sure.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing in there.
I guess they could have done a blood test. I know she was
Yeah.
drained of excess.
Drained
but
of
she still
blood.
would have had.
But why was she drained of blood? Maybe
But there
because
still would
she
have
was
been
pregnant.
blood like in the tissue. That couldn't they have maybe done a test?
I guess. I
Oh,
don't. I'm not a
no.
doctor.
I don't-
Doctors.
I don't know how good that test was, Olivia. Back then, they were
Right.
still doing what they called the rabbit test. Like, that was a situation.
Yeah.
What's the
So-
rabbit test? What's that?
I'm gonna look this up because if I tell you from memory, I'm gonna botch it. Please
Okay.
hold. I'm gonna ask
Ask Google.
ChatGPT. I'm asking
So-
ChatGPT. It has all the answers.
So yeah, so I think there is a very real possibility that Mark Hansen and George Hodel knew each other.
Okay.
I think that he went in the same circles. He was a prominent doctor. I think he was probably part of an abortion ring. There was also a doctor named Dr. Scott, but he also changed his name a bunch. She's got it.
Yes.
Go, Ashley.
I've got it. Are you ready for this? I'm reading verbatim, and I'm reading this cold. The rabbit test, in quotes, was an early pregnancy test developed in the 1920s to determine if a woman was pregnant by injecting her urine into a female rabbit. The test worked because of the hormone human chorionic I can't say it. HCG. It is the short name.
Great.
Which is present in the urine of pregnant women. Here's how the test worked. A sample of the woman's urine was injected into a female rabbit. After a few days, the rabbit was euthanized and its ovaries were examined. If the rabbit's ovaries showed signs of stimulation, i.e. enlargement and development of something, it indicated the presence of this hormone confirming pregnancy.
What?
Despite the common myth that, quote, the rabbit died meant a positive pregnancy test, the reality was that the rabbit was always killed in the process, regardless of the result. The test was phased out in the 1960s as more humane and quicker methods, and over-the-counter pregnancy tests became available.
Wait, it wasn't phased out till the 60s?
Yeah, for 40 years, this is what we were doing. We were just killing rabbits.
This is
I
why
was today years.
the women's bodies are so misunderstood. This
Yes.
right here. This is it.
Yes.
This.
Yeah.
That's
Well, there were a lot of rabbit tests in Hollywood because remember we talked about last week Brenda Allen and her ring of sex workers who worked for the mob.
Yep.
And maybe Elizabeth worked for them.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
were
Well,
in cahoots with
What
the
if she
abortion
was-
ring. They had to be.
What if she
I
was
mean-
pregnant and didn't want the abortion? Like, what if she was going to have? Would that be
Right.
worth killing over?
Which leads me to my final
Okay.
suspect.
the perfect segue.
Yes, it was a perfect segue. Thank you, Olivia. This is my favorite one. And the one I lean towards, now, I will say that it's probably because I read this book, but I did a lot of research and I still kind of feel this way.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay.
Bugsy Siegel
Yeah.
and Norman Chandler.
And together. Okay. Bugsy and Norman together.
Yes.
Norman Chandler, whose headshot is giving president face.
President face.
It is.
And Bugsy Siegel here with a fedora and a mugshot.
Looking like Bugsy. So this is from Donald H. Wolfe's book in 2006, The Mob, the Mogul, and the Murder That Transfixed Los Angeles. He believes that Elizabeth Short was murdered by the gangster Bugsy Siegel at the request of newspaper publisher Norman Chandler.
Ooh, that ties back to the newspaper squashing
and
the story.
And the fact that they worked with the LAPD. Okay. Why?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Was he the editor at the Herald? Was it the Herald?
The Los Angeles Times. No, the Herald was a Hearst paper.
Oh, but he was, wait. Go back to the...
What?
Sorry, I'm shorting out. Go back to the reporter. What was her name?
That's Aggie. She worked for William Randolph Hearst.
She was a Hearst. Okay.
Yes. But all of these papers were opposing, but yet, I mean, Chandler and Hearst are going to look out for each other. They're rich guys.
So with her,
they think they got us.
I knew one of us was going to do it. I knew it. So you're welcome. I gave you Hearst just for that.
You
had to.
The power of the press is the most, what is it? The most incredible power of the world.
It is. All right. So here we go. So why might this have happened? As Wolfe tells it, Chandler, the publisher of the Los Angeles Times, who were the ones that gave the FBI stuff to the police and worked with the police to make sure that they were the first ones to give out the name of Elizabeth Short and her identity and all that stuff. So he had a brief sexual relationship with Elizabeth Short. And
Chandler
when the aspiring
did?
Yes.
Okay.
And when the aspiring actress got pregnant, he enlisted Siegel to kill her. Now, Bugsy Siegel is notoriously violent.
Okay.
And he did a lot of his own stuff. People would be like, yeah, he's Bugsy though. He didn't need to do it on his own, but he liked it.
Ooh.
He liked hurting people.
Total psychopath. Very scary guy.
Yes. And there was a trip that he had planned to go visit his family. So he was going back and forth between LA and Las Vegas because the Flamingo was opening because he owned the Flamingo. Mm-hmm. And he had a trip to go to New York to visit his family scheduled for January 15th, 1947. And he canceled it. And that's the morning that Elizabeth Short's body was found.
Mm-hmm.
So Wolfe, the author of this book, grew up knowing a man called Uncle Vern. It's very interesting, who worked for Bugsy Siegel. And Vern seems to have suggested over the years that Siegel could have had something to do with the infamous Black Dahlia murder. Apparently, until this book, Bugsy Siegel hadn't really been considered a Black Dahlia suspect. But I personally think, Olivia talking about it being a show, it's a mob hit. Let me show you, right?
Yeah.
But
Let's go
Wolfe
crazy,
says,
friends.
that it's Siegel's implausibility that makes him such a good suspect. Siegel and Chandler were so powerful, he said, that the LAPD helped them to cover up the murder.
Yeah.
Everybody was corrupt, as we talked about earlier. He said, I found that if you understand the times and you understand the players, it's very plausible. The public thought that the LAPD gangster squad's job was to arrest the criminals in Los Angeles, but their real function was to protect the criminals who were making the payoffs and arrest those who weren't. That was their real job.
I feel like, back to my whole theory of there's a message. This was a message to a group or to something. What if this was a message to women? You keep your mouth shut, you stay in line, you
do what we say,
you get the abortion, you don't, if she was gonna, I don't know, either go public or she wanted to have the baby, or and this was a message of,
or even if it
don't
was
get out
something
of line.
as simple as embarrassment. because we're talking about someone who is a public figure and who is like, hey, you're a high profile guy.
He's married.
Right,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
The embarrassment of going public with the affair. I mean,
No, I mean, like,
that seems
yes,
like
that,
yeah.
I think that is the reason why he probably was like, hey, I need you to take care of it. But Bugsy's reason of making it look like it did and the show of this display was, I think, a message to all the people that worked for them.
Right.
Yeah,
The syndicate.
and Bugsy would have also had, because of his mob boss status, he would have had access to the network of people, going to my sort of accomplice theory of like, hey, this is more than a one-man job, and maybe Bugsy, because he's personally involved, he was the one who's like, yeah, I beat her in the face or, whatever.
Yes.
But then someone else, he's like, call Joe, who did whatever other piece.
Yeah.
And then like some other people, like, did like the dumping and station.
Yeah.
Like this could have been, forget 2 people. Like this could have been a 6-person
Correct.
operation.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Bugsy hits her over the head and kills her and cuts her face because he likes that shit. Right.
Yeah.
They made her, let's say they made her go to the abortion clinic.
Right.
Right. And she's like, I'm not doing it.
Wasn't she also going to leave town? She was scared.
She did leave town.
And she was scared because people were after her. So maybe it's
right. And then they showed up in San Diego.
Right. And she said, maybe she was like, no, I'm keeping the baby, and was trying to hide. And
she's trying to hide.
Nope. And
exactly. And they got her.
Yeah. And not only did they need to get rid of her, but they needed to send a message to all the other women and people of, don't go against us. This is what's going to happen to you.
And it doesn't. And honestly, I mean, as much as it probably was women, it could have just been, don't play with the mob.
Right.
Don't play with us at all.
Yeah.
And then it just got so right. Bugsy hits her over the head. He carves the stuff in her face. She's at the abortion clinic. The abortionist, whoever that may be, maybe it's George Hodel, maybe it's Patrick O'Reilly, maybe it was Walter Bailey, maybe it was somebody we don't know, that Dr. Scott that was like the head of the abortion ring, right? Does the cutting. What if that Jack Anderson Wilson guy with the limp helps dispose of the body?
Yeah, maybe he's in the mix.
Maurice, who has the black Ford sedan, drives the car. Like, there are so many people.
A lot of
Mark
things could be
Hansen
true
was
at
watching.
once.
Who knows? Like, there were I think it's like,
yeah, a lot of things can be true at once here, I think. And and again, like the whole, because of what you were saying earlier too, Olivia, about the quote unquote the signature of the kill being so mixed.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, I think implies like stages and or passage of time between like part 1, part 2, and like the different types of injury. And again, like, where are you dumping the body? And then you didn't hide it, like you staged it on purpose, like you're saying, to send some sort of message. Like they wanted it found, they wanted it seen, they wanted it to be wild. So I think, Jen, this is again a very, I don't want to say simple, but an extremely like straightforward and plausible of like, you had a personal connection person. So check that box.
Yeah.
But then you also had someone extremely violent. Check that box. Then you have resources to, do sort of like the over the top elements.
Yep.
I mean, this theory, I think, ticks a lot of the boxes that maybe some of the others were like, well, it's got part 1 and 2 but not part 3, or it's got 3 and 1 but not 2.
Yeah. And there were major like mob wars happening at the time too.
I was curious, what's going on at the time?
So Mickey Cohen and Bugsy Siegel worked together, and then the other, I'm not gonna remember the other mob boss's name, but they were not, they don't get along. But Bugsy was then the mob, what? But then Bugsy was murdered in June of 1947. So Elizabeth Short died in January. Remember, they had that assassination attempt on Brenda Allen, who ran the prostitution ring, the sex worker ring of the syndicate, like 2 months later. And then Bugsy Siegel was killed in June. So there's also maybe the theory, maybe it wasn't Bugsy, maybe it was the other guy.
Or it was Bugsy and they were like, this was too showy. You've gone
too far. Exactly. You've gone too far, Bugsy. You're out. Well, and that's one of the things with Bugsy. They were done with him because he wasn't doing what he's supposed. He's out like with the flamingo. He's spending too
Right.
much money.
He's the one that was killed because like, yeah, Vegas was not going well, and they
was
were
not
sick of
going well. He was
running
overspending
to Vegas.
big
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Big
Yeah.
time. There was a grand jury held about this case. So the
Okay.
Los Angeles District Attorney's Office began their own investigation in 1949 for the grand jury. So 2 years
Okay.
after this happened. While the investigation by the LAPD was widely covered by newspapers, the DA's investigation was kind of more muted. And due to a lapse in time since the murder and to the secrecy imposed by the grand jury, they kind of didn't want people to know what was happening. So in the 1949 grand jury summary said, in the original part of the investigation, it was found that due to the wide publicity given to the case, many acquaintances and friends of the victim were reluctant to tell all they knew about her. The LAPD records and reports indicate some stupidity and carelessness on the part of the more experienced officers who were working on the case from time to time. But as of this report, dated October 28th, 1949, there has not been found any indication of payoff, misconduct, or concealment of facts on the parts of any officers.
Oh, please.
It is the consensus of officers Ed Barrett, Jack Smyer, F.A. Brown, who was very corrupt, and the undersigned that there is insufficient evidence as of this date, October 28th, 1949, upon which any suspect could now be brought to trial for the murder of Elizabeth Short. 1950, the grand jury did not continue the probe, so it was dropped after that first grand jury. Many of the original findings from the LAPD investigation have since been taken as fact and have been expanded upon by theories, as we found just now.
Yep.
The district attorney's investigation uncovered new information, which, like a couple of the suspects, George Hodel, in fact, wasn't brought in until then. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so it brought new things. Though not all of the DA's investigation has been published, the files remain in the custody at the district attorney's office. Included in these files are statements, interviews, photographs, and other documents that shed light on the murder of Elizabeth Short. As is its policy, the Los Angeles Police Department, any case that is not solved is an open case. The LAPD Black Dahlia murder files are barred from the view of anyone other than the current detective assigned to the case. The LAPD also asserts that their Black Dahlia reports are exempt from release under California's Public Records Act because the case files are investigatory and are exempt from release. The LAPD is still taking leads on the case.
Are they?
Like, what kind of lead are you expecting to get?
Like, is there one
now?
cop that sits at the LAPD and it's like that's their case?
But this goes back to, like, in the year of our Lord, 2024, cold cases are in fact being solved, but they are being solved because of things like genetic testing and specifically, like, better DNA.
Right.
So this is where I'm like, but
they didn't collect any
tricky
DNA because the crime scene had been compromised, so they didn't.
Right. Well, they wouldn't have even known to have done that, Olivia. That wasn't even on the table, even a little bit. It was maybe a fingerprint. Like,
right. But I mean,
cute,
like any item
the body was
had
wiped clean
from the scene that could be tested for DNA. Now, we're not like the chain of custody was not correct. So,
but I think they did a good job because they cleaned the body with kerosene. So I don't think there might have been any.
And who would know to do that except a doctor or a mob boss?
Right.
But that to me feels more like a fingerprint situation because they're not like, oh, wait till they swab her for DNA. They're like, what? That's cute. We don't even know what that means.
Right.
Not a thing. It's fingerprints or nothing in 47. But yeah, you're right, Olivia. Just the handling of, even something like touch DNA, which is something we now know you can get or have, but it's like her body is dusty bones at this point, and we're not testing that. You can't test remains. In any things that were handled, like, also not on the table. So I think that is why, unlike something like some of these other cases where
the Golden State Killer, right? Like but
even Golden State Killer, that was still in. It was because of some of his victims that were later, and because they did have blood that they, like, hey, maybe we can do something with this blood, or at least they had like blood typing. But it's almost like, unless you get some sort of brand new piece of smoking gun evidence, like, I don't know, like a letter or a photo or something, like in this instance, like DNA probably is off the table just because of the nature of the crime and the disposal of the body, and then also just the lack of, like you said, like even just evidence at all at the crime scene. Like it was like what? It was like the sack, and there wasn't other stuff.
There was like a cement sack and a footprint.
But everybody like traipsed all over the crime scene.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there was stuff. There's cigarettes everywhere because everybody smoked. And yeah. And all of the records aren't out, and the autopsy report is not fully out because there were things in that report, there are things in those records that really they should be at this point because the killer's probably dead.
They're already, is everybody on
but because it's open, we can't see it, and so we can speculate wildly as much as we want and allege as much as we want who did it, but until somebody can see those full records.
Are any of these men still alive that are on the suspect list?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
If you
were in your 30s, your 20s or 30s and the 40s.
1947. Yeah, I got to think about this. My grandmother turned 90 this year, and she was born in 34. So she would have been, I can't math. She would have been 13.
Yeah.
So did she do it? Ashley, are you saying it was your grandmother?
My grandmother, who was 13 at the time of the Black Dahlia serial killer.
Maybe she helped George Knowlton and Janice.
Yeah. He was a taxi girl and was.
Yeah.
We're
so there you go. That's
wow.
Still unsolved.
I'm going to start writing my theory, which is the Wells Hitchcock theory.
Ooh, they did it together?
Were in on it together.
You got to throw a doctor in there too, though.
Wow.
Well,
Jen, well done, Jen, just plowing through that mountain of suspects. And like you said, there were other extraneous people we didn't even discuss on this.
What a note to end our first season on. Woo!
Right? Yeah. Right. Disappointing that ladies, we haven't solved anything, much like that one detective. However, I feel like
it's not because we're corrupt, though.
No, we're not corrupt, and honestly, we tried harder. Like
we did.
Yes, we gave it at least as much, if not more, time and energy and care than certain detectives.
Certain detectives that were on the payroll. In LA at the time. Yeah.
How dare he?
No, I love it. Jen, this was fabulous. And yes, what a note to end on. Keep an eye on our socials because this is not the end. This is just the season finale.
Just at the beginning.
We've got a lot more to come.
And scene.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Wicked Stage Pod.
Follow us on Instagram and check out our Patreon for more exclusive content.
These deliciously wicked episodes drop every other Friday, so make sure you subscribe or follow and don't get left waiting in the wings.